Super. So it looks like we can see quite a few hands. So the majority of people can hear me. If you can't, as I mentioned, or you're having any technical issues throughout today's webinar, then there is a chat window just in your toolbox. You can use the chat window, and we've got a couple of the team here behind the scenes who can respond and help you with any issues. There's also a Q&A button. So you'll see in the toolbox window, there's a little Q&A option. That Q&A button can be used to ask specific questions around the content that we're going to discuss today, any of the kind of areas that I cover, and then we've earmarked around kind of 10 to 15 minutes towards the end of the session to cover off some of those questions. And I'll try and get to as many as I can. In terms of the general session itself, we will be providing the slides to you by email after the session, so you don't need to kind of frantically write down too many notes, but feel free to be writing notes as you go along. And I also talk about a number of tools that you can use to support your digital marketing efforts throughout the presentation, and where I mention those, there'll be links included in the slides to those various tools throughout. So if you didn't quite catch the name of something, then you'll receive links and additional info about those afterwards by email after the session. We're also booking a number of one-to-ones. So if you want to kind of deep dive in any of the particular areas, we're booking 20-minute one-to-ones with anyone who wants to have a one-to-one session. There'll be some contact details at the end where you can email through and book those one-to-ones if you want to have a kind of more in-depth conversation about any of the topics we covered today. So as a quick introduction, I'm Dan Spicer. I'm founder and director of an agency called Ventura Digital. Ventura Digital are a performance marketing agency, and we specialize in using digital marketing to drive a value for your business, and that value can be, well, is usually in the form of revenue and sales, but in a B2B sense or any other kind of industry, it could be in the form of generating leads, could be in the form of growing brand awareness, but our specialism is in understanding the key metrics that drive a particular business and using digital marketing to support and drive value there. So what we're going to cover off today is some of the fundamentals of digital marketing to drive customer acquisition and sales. And now we've only got about 40 minutes, so it's a short session. So we're going to cover the fundamentals at a high level and cover off some of the key areas that we need to be thinking about. And really this session is suitable for anyone and any organisation at any stage of their digital marketing efforts, because the fundamentals and the strategic framework really do kind of ring true depending on no matter what size of company you are. But I do know, looking at the attendees list, the majority of companies on the call today will be on the left hand side of this model, kind of in startup phase or in early foundational stage. And that's often where you'll have a digital advocate within the business. So it's often a founder or one of the senior kind of founding members of the company who is responsible for looking at digital marketing and looking at using digital to drive sales within the business and looking at some of those key growth areas that you can kind of drive using digital channels. Then as you mature, companies move to the middle point in this scale here, where you might have a digital team. So that's where you might have a digital marketing manager who's solely responsible for this strategy, and then maybe a number of people underneath them, all the way through to kind of mature organizations on the right hand side, where digital really is an intrinsic part of the business and drives all areas of customer acquisition within the business. So no matter what stage you're on in that maturity scale, hopefully today you'll take away at least 2 or 3 things that you can start to think about. And of course, we can have a one-to-one session afterwards, as I mentioned, if you're looking to have a deeper conversation about that. So our general flow for today will covering these 3 topics. First of all, I'm going to start with an overview of the digital marketing landscape, really just where we were 3 years ago, where we are now, some of the key things you should be considering for your business. We'll then look at more broadly how to use digital to drive sales and some of those kind of key fundamentals that we should be thinking about. And we'll end the session on a funnel marketing framework. So that is effectively where we will be looking at the specific framework around your funnel strategy to understand where you should be prioritizing your time in order to drive customer acquisition and sales. So first and foremost, when we look at the digital marketing landscape, I don't need to dwell too much on this because hopefully everyone knows the importance of digital and the role digital plays in your business. From both a B2C and a B2B perspective, there's some key things to think about. From a B2C perspective, so if you're targeting kind of direct to consumer, the stats show that up to 50% or 57% of the purchase journey has already been made before they contact you as a supplier. So they're using digital, they're using social media, they're using all of these channels, Google, etc., to research the products and services they need, to research the different products, the different companies that offer those products and services, and then making a decision based on the information they can find before they actually contact you and before they reach out and start exploring your particular products and services. So digital is obviously vitally important to ensure that you as a company, your brand and your business is in the right places at the right time when people are actively searching for products or services or information around those products or services. And this also rings true in the B2B sense. I know there are a couple of attendees today who have direct to business to business companies. And the B2B industry has fundamentally changed quite significantly, even more so over the last few years, where certain channels like social media, where certain channels like LinkedIn in terms of social media are used to understand a company, understand what they offer, review their content, understand if their products and services are the right fit, doing that research ahead of time before they actually reach out to you as a company. So now more than ever, it's important that you as an organization, your company are in those places, are in those channels, and are ensuring that you put the steps in place to be in front of those people, to ensure that when they are researching and when they are in that kind of intense stage of actually needing a product or service, they find you. Or ultimately, if they're not in that research stage and you want to grow your brand awareness and you want to put your products and service in front of them, you do the right things to make sure that you are using these channels in the correct way. For instance, LinkedIn advertising as an example, it's highly cost effective in terms of telling LinkedIn the exact demographic of person you want to get in front of. So this person with a specific job title that works in a specific industry, and you can pay LinkedIn £20 to reach a subset of people, for instance. And the average cost on LinkedIn advertising is around £30 to £40 per 1,000 views. So you can pay LinkedIn £30 to £40 to reach 1,000 people that are qualified and are your specific target demographic, rather than just kind of, I suppose, posting and praying as the terminology goes. So just starting up a LinkedIn page, putting some content there and hoping someone will see it. It's your responsibility to understand how these platforms work, and doing the things that you need to do to put your content in front of your target audience. And that's what we're going to cover off in the session today. And in terms of that B2B audience as well, the social selling landscape has fundamentally changed. So no surprises here, the top stat, that 90% of people don't respond to cold calls or unsolicited emails anymore. But 84% of people will engage with a salesperson if they see they're connected through a colleague, an acquaintance, or a friend. And that's where platforms like LinkedIn work perfectly, because of course LinkedIn shows you your second, third and fourth degree connections. So it shows your network of people that you're connected with. So it makes it very easy for a potential prospect to see your connections and who might be a second, third degree connection, and you can use that to make introductions. So the platforms are well set up to help you drive sales for your business. And more importantly, the reason why we're having this conversation is because fundamentally, digital now has to be the key driver of sales and customer acquisition for your businesses. A Gartner report that predicted, that was released recently, predicted that 1 in 4 businesses will lose their market position by 2022 due to digital and social media incompetence. When you read the report, incompetence means companies are unable to connect the dots between their digital and social media activity and the value that those channels drive, aka really understanding how those channels can drive sales, acquire new customers and help you retain those customers. And the same report showed that 1 in 5 companies will cede dominance to a company founded after 2010. So that's obviously a huge risk to kind of older, more mature organizations, but actually for many on the call and on the webinar today is a huge opportunity for startups and recently founded organizations who understand digital a bit better, who understand digital plays an important role in acquiring customers and can start to put the tactics in place that will allow you to acquire customers through that channel and through all the channels that are available. And really this chart shows you, this is part of Mary Meeker's Internet Trends report from last year, shows you the kind of real shift in why. So you look at the silent generation and even the baby boomer generation, bottom 2 rows, scroll across to the right hand side, their preferred mode of communication was telephone, so actively speaking to an organization to find out more information. Whereas you go all the way to the top, generation Y and X, and you can see the shift now to internet is the #1 channel, web chat is the #1 channel where they want to be able to communicate with a brand, and social media is the #1 channel where they want to be able to communicate with brands, get the information they need. So it's vitally important that you're on these channels. And fundamentally, the social media landscape has changed as well. So we're going to go on to social advertising as a key customer acquisition channel. All of these platforms offer social advertising platforms and social advertising features which are highly cost effective. So Facebook and Instagram, this is UK monthly active users. Facebook and Instagram, the 2 most popular platforms in the UK. Monthly active users means logged on once in the last 30 days, but we know that people log on to Facebook a lot more than once a month. But the stats show that 35 million people in the UK actively use Facebook, 28 million on Instagram, 19 in a B2B sense on LinkedIn, 13 on Twitter as well. And also the landscape has fundamentally changed. So there are a number of new platforms that have come into place. So Snapchat with 15 million monthly active users, Facebook Messenger 25 million, and WhatsApp now with 39 million at the last count late last year, actively using these platforms, all of them with social advertising capabilities, and all of them fairly cost effective. So in a Facebook and Instagram world, if you're targeting potential customers, the average cost per 1,000 views is £5. So you can give Facebook £5 and say, I want to put my content in front of these type of people, and you can pay it £5 to reach 1,000 people. So actually they're relatively cost-effective platforms. You just need to understand which buttons to click. You need to know where to select, which buttons to push in terms of telling Facebook who you want to get in front of. And then effectively, fundamentally paying advertising dollars and pounds to get your content and get your message in front of the right people. And of course, obviously in this current economic climate, I hope everyone is faring well and managing to get through and start to ride things out okay. But of course, in this current economic climate, what we're seeing is social media activity flying through the roof. Actually, in the last week alone, I was looking at a stat last night, engagement within Facebook and Instagram alone has increased by 400%. So more and more people are spending their time in these platforms. So actually, there's more and more opportunity to get your message in front of those people. Now, we obviously have to think carefully around the message that we're putting in front of them in current economic climate. But actually now more than ever, there's an opportunity to stay connected, to communicate well, and to use all of these features to ensure that your brand remains front of mind in front of consumers. And importantly, while that's important as well from a competitive stance, here's a report from Forrester which shows that 92% of organisations view digital experience as their #1 priority. So in terms of your business strategy, we know as a business that we need to prioritise digital and digital marketing. And 60% actually use digital experiences as a competitive differentiator. So we own the same products and services, or we offer the same products and services as our competitors down the road. However, we offer you a better experience, a better digital experience. You can buy your products easier through our website. There's less friction to getting the information you need. However, actually, when you look at these reports, it shows that the majority of organizations are failing to deliver a good digital marketing experience. So even though they're saying that it's a priority, consumers don't feel like they're getting the information quick enough. They don't feel like they're getting the right information through websites, through digital experiences. So now more than ever, it's important that you consider that. And finally, the point on the digital marketing landscape. If I hope that you take kind of 1 or 2 points away from today, the core point that I think we want to take away is that all of these digital channels, whether it's Google from an advertising and PPC perspective, whether it's Facebook advertising, whether it's LinkedIn advertising, all have their own, they call algorithms. So the platforms control how your content is distributed in different ways. And the businesses that are really thriving in these spaces and really driving good return on investment understand how the platforms work. Now, we've only got a short period of time today, but what I implore is that if you are looking at accelerating your investment in these channels, you go away and you take the time now more than ever to research how these individual platforms work. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of blog posts and great content online around how Facebook advertising algorithm works, how LinkedIn advertising algorithm works. Some really fantastic content that I don't need to kind of repeat in depth at the moment. But by really and truly understanding how they work, you'll be able to start to get a feeling for exactly how you can monetize them and use them effectively. But I'm going to cover that at a high level in the next half hour or so. And just to give you an example of what I mean by algorithms, if we think about Facebook as a platform, so Facebook has 2 different types of algorithms. One that controls how people interact with each other and how much content you see from your friends and family, and also how much content you see from businesses and business pages when you follow businesses. And they're 2 different algorithms. As a business, when you post on your Facebook page, you can at a maximum reach 1.5% of your followers, because Facebook is making a decision on how many of your followers it thinks are actually relevant to you, and how much of your content is actually relevant to your followers, and will only show your post to 1.5%. So if you've worked hard to get 1,000 Facebook friends, followers on your business page, the maximum amount of people that will see that post is 15 people of those thousands. If you have 1 million Facebook fans, as per this slide on screen, the maximum you'll be able to reach is 15,000. However, if a person likes, comments on a post, so if you go away and like or comment or share a post on Facebook, that can go up to 33% of your personal network. On average, that reaches around 135 people every time you like, comment or share. 113 people. So what that means is if you get 135 people to like or comment on one of your business posts, it actually reaches more people and more people see it than if you had 1 million Facebook fans. If you bring those numbers down, if you got 13 people, 13.5, but 13 people to like or comment or share on a post, it reaches more people than if you had 100,000 Facebook. And this is what I mean by the algorithm. So you can see the stats at the bottom there. Actually, the strategy in social media should be, how do we get people to like, comment or share and interact? Because that reaches significantly more people than having Facebook fans. So actually having Facebook fans is redundant in the terms of actually getting people to see your content. Getting more people to like, comment or engage with your content is more important. And of course, you need people to see your content, to like, comment or share, but that's where advertising comes into play. So you can give Facebook £5, it will reach 1,000 people. If 13 of those people go and like, comment or share that post, then 1,500 additional people will see the content, and that's where you can get virality. So it's important to think about how these platforms work. And the same thing on LinkedIn. Same algorithm, slightly different numbers, but 28 people liking or commenting or sharing content on LinkedIn reaches more people more than having 100,000 LinkedIn followers of your page. So all of those interactions are vitally important and what can drive your visibility within those. And ultimately, what that means is we have to understand who can interact, who is more likely to interact with your content, and therefore who is more likely to help you scale the amount of people that see your content. So a good way to think about it is the 90%, 9% and 1 rule. I believe it's called Pareto's law. The percentages don't ring true, but what this research effectively tries to say is that 90% of your customers are passive consumers. 90% of the people who are interested in your products are passive consumers. They'll look at your website, they will look at a Facebook post, they will read an email, but they won't do anything with it. They'll consume that content, but they'll largely interact. They'll buy your products. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It serves a need, but they won't interact with you. 9% of your customers are curators. So they might actually go and interact. They might like a post. They might click on an email and click through to your website and engage and consume the content a little bit more. And they're a little bit more active. But 1% of your customers are those people that will actively advocate for your product, that will actively share your content on social media, that will forward on an email, that will refer a friend. And it's this 1% we need to try and target. And this is where the funnel framework and funnel marketing comes into play. Because if you can target that 1% and you can get them actively engaging, sharing content, whether it's a current customer or whether it's a potential customer, all of those interactions engaging will give you and help you accelerate and give you scale, because the algorithms, as I mentioned, are doing all the work of resharing all that content. So it's vitally important to think about the funnel marketing strategy and how your funnel works. So to simplify that, in terms of the funnel marketing strategy, the way to think about it is obviously you've probably seen this before, and you've seen kind of traditional marketing funnels that will highlight that a customer that buys your product will loosely go through this journey, whether it's B2C or B2B, awareness, consideration, preference, purchase, loyalty, advocacy. And they will go through some kind of thought process, research process, as they step through this journey. So if on the B2C side, if I'm thinking, if you're a photographer and you're looking to generate more business, awareness. I've got a wedding next year. I'm looking at everything that, what do I need? What do I need to plan out? Consideration. I definitely need a photographer. What photographers are available in my local area? Preference. I found these two photographers. Should I use photographer A or photographer B? Purchase. I've just bought services from this photographer. Loyalty. I love my pictures from this photographer. Advocacy. You should use this photographer for your wedding. That journey they go through rings true in terms of the research and thought process they go through all the way through that journey. On the B2B side, it works exactly the same. So if you're selling manufacturing equipment into a company, for instance, awareness. What type of equipment do I need, and who's best served? Consideration. Do I need a piece of equipment A, piece of equipment B? Preference. Should I use company A, company B, and so on and so forth. So it's your responsibility, first and foremost, especially in startup mode, if you're in startup mode, to really map this research journey and start to understand, okay, what are the questions they're asking through this research journey. And when we think about customer acquisition, you can loosely split it by top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel, which you might have heard of before. Top of funnel being they have zero brand awareness about you. Middle funnel being they might have heard of you, but they're doing some research. Bottom of funnel, they're ready to purchase. So you really need to get them into your website and convert them through bottom of funnel. And when you start to understand and start to map in that buying journey from a customer acquisition perspective and the thought process they go through, you can start to kind of build a picture of what channels they're using, for instance, on those channels. And what's important to know is that when you're starting to run customer acquisition tactics, top of funnel is always going to deliver a lower ROAS, which is a return on advertising spend. And because they've got lower brand awareness, they're still doing the research. While bottom of funnel, if they've shown some kind of intent to purchase from you, will deliver higher return on investment. So those tactics will normally convert better. But what a trap that a lot of marketers and potential marketers fall into is focusing purely on the higher return on advertising spend, which is your bottom of funnel. But actually, that's a much smaller subset of people that are potentially ready to buy. What we need to look at is every stage of the funnel to ensure that you can fill in the top of your funnel with the people that may not be ready to buy yet, but don't have any brand awareness around your business or your product or service. But that's okay, as long as you have the right steps to pick them up and convert them at the bottom of the funnel. And the best way to think about the funnel is different channels that are available for you. So once you start to think about what journey and you started to understand, okay, what are the research questions that people go through? What are they typing in? What are they researching as they go through that journey? What you could start to understand is, okay, what channels are they using at each stage? And if we're going to simplify this for a lot and really start to look at, okay, where are we going to prioritize all this activity? Because I know, especially in this current climate, both time is the commodity and now budget is obviously vitally important to consider, given everything that we're living through right now. If we're really going to prioritize 3 different core areas that you should be focusing on, top of funnel is where social advertising comes into play. This is where you can achieve kind of cost-effective cost per 1,000 views. So as I mentioned in Facebook, you're around the £5 to £6 per 1,000 views. And this is where you can really generate kind of brand awareness for your product, show them core messages, key messages, and get them engaging with your content and clicking through to your website wherever possible. The middle of funnel, so as we think about top of funnel of people just early research stages, middle of funnel is where people actually now have a bit more intent. So they're actively searching for your product and they're making those research decisions. This is where Google Ads comes into play. So if you haven't run Google Ads before, this is the Google AdWords platform, Google PPC. So this is where you can effectively pay Google to appear at the top of Google for whenever they search for a particular product or service. So if they're actively looking for your product or service, you should be running Google Ads to be visible for them. And all of that top and middle of funnel activity, what that's doing is driving them into your website, ultimately, to consume content. But the latest research shows that the average consumer buys from a website on the 3rd visit. So they're actually visiting your website, clicking on your social ads, clicking on your Google PPC ads, but they're not at the point of purchase, maybe because they've seen your ad on their mobile and they've clicked on their mobile through to your website, but they're not ready to buy on the mobile, so they have to come back on a laptop or a desktop PC. So knowing that actually the average person has to visit a website 3 times before purchasing, what you need to do is ensure that you've got everything in place to remarket to them. So once they've landed on your website, you effectively stay communicating with them and remarketing to them. And this is where you can run both social advertising and Google PPC ads to remarket to people that have previously visited your website. So if they've visited your website, looked at the pricing page, if you sell direct to consumer, you might have a shop if they've looked at particular products. If not, if they've looked at your contact us page or any key pages, you can then say to Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, if they've looked at my website previously, now show them this sales message. Now show them this offer, because I know that there's intent to buy and intent to purchase from us. So that's where you can really start to be more considerate of your budgets and ensure that actually if people are showing intent by visiting particular areas of your website, you ensure you stay front of mind and you put your sales messages directly in front of them. So when you're looking at KPIs across the board, ultimately, if we're thinking about top funnel activity, so growing your brand awareness, this is where kind of views actually is one of the most important aspects. If you're telling LinkedIn, you're telling Facebook, you're telling Instagram that I want to put my content in front of these people, these specific people by demographic, by location, by interests, however you want to target them, then actually you want to drive as many views as possible within your target audience. If you're using middle of funnel tactics, that's where clicks is obviously important, because you want to click people into your website. But then once they've clicked into your website, you should be running bottom of funnel remarketing tactics, and that's where conversion and sales metrics obviously become key. The trap that a lot of people fall into is they focus purely on bottom of funnel, and they focus purely on trying to drive immediate sales. But of course, if the traffic's not getting to you and you're not running top of funnel ads, and you're not running middle of funnel to drive that traffic into your website, then ultimately you don't have the volume to convert. So this is where actually, when you're thinking about your customer acquisition tactics and your strategy and framework, we need to be thinking across that entire funnel. And just as a high level example to round the advertising section off, if we're looking at top of funnel, here's just a few, and I mean there's hundreds, but here's just a few of the elements that you can target people by in Facebook and Instagram. You can target people who have previously viewed your Facebook and Instagram posts. You can target people by demographics, so not just things like age and location and gender, but also by income level, by household income level, by household prices, by previous purchase behavior, which is all in the Facebook ecosystem. You can also actually do things like you can upload people, if you've got a customer database and you've collected it in a GDPR compliant way, you can upload email addresses, you can upload mobile numbers, and you can actually match those email addresses and mobile numbers to Facebook profiles, and then say to Facebook, I want to put my content in front of those people. So you can be very sophisticated. And again, all of this is around the kind of £5, £6, £7 per 1,000 views mark. So we're not talking considerate costs to do that. There's a link there at the bottom if you want to start looking and exploring those options, business.facebook.com. In the B2B sense, same methodology, just different really things you can target against. You can target against specific industries, specific job titles. So if you're a financial advisor and you're selling, or say you're an accountant and you're selling into finance managers and you're selling into HR teams, you can say, I want to target anyone that has a job title of a HR manager that works in financial services or accounting industries. It's slightly more expensive in LinkedIn. It's around kind of £30 to £40 per cost per 1,000 views, because LinkedIn obviously charge you the right to be a little bit more granular with your targeting. But again, you can still be very granular and you can still pay LinkedIn to ensure your message goes in front of your very specific people from a top of funnel perspective. And then in terms of Google PPC and AdWords targeting, that's all based on keywords. So obviously you're just targeting any particular word that someone searches in Google. And there's two ways to think about it. You can target people by brand. So if you're if you're investing in marketing and growing your brand, but when someone types your brand name into Google, you don't appear there yet, then you really need to be paying Google to appear there. You pay Google on a cost per click basis. So ultimately it's actually free to appear there, but you only pay when someone clicks on your link. And those cost per clicks can vary anywhere between 5p a click all the way up to a few pounds per click, depending on how competitive it is in terms of the words that you're bidding for. But you can bid on brand and then you can bid on non-brand. So that's where us as an agency, for instance, we will be bidding on people searching for digital marketing services in Essex. Because we want to be visible for anyone actively searching for those types of services. And then finally, remarketing options. So this is where both social advertising and Google PPC, if we're just talking about those two priority channels, offer you the ability to say to those platforms, anyone that's visited my site previously or anyone that's visited a particular page on my website, show them this message, show them this offer, show them this discount, whatever it might be. And that's obviously vitally important to convert. And it's actually one of the most important tactics to drive conversions, because as I previously mentioned, the stats show that the average person has to revisit a website 3 times before they purchase. And what you don't want to do is lose that intent, especially if they forget that they visited your website or something distracts them, they don't go ahead and kind of revisit you again. Remarketing gives you the ability to stay front of mind, and if they do visit your website, continually put content in front of them. And then finally, where do you send that traffic? Ultimately, obviously, you're sending them into your website, but your website might not be optimized yet, and you might not be comfortable that your website is working as hard as possible to convert that traffic. So one tool that we like to use here when we work with clients that don't have a website that's fully optimized to convert yet is Unbounce. It is you may have heard it before, it's a paid tool, but starts, I believe, at around £80 per month, so not overly expensive. And what that allows you to do is spin up branded landing pages that you can send traffic to. And they have a whole bunch of kind of testing facilities within there. It's all drag and drop, that you can kind of split test your traffic and split test different messages, put forms in different places. Happy to have a follow-up conversation about this, but there's lots of features that allow you to kind of test and drive traffic into a landing page and convert them better. So actually, if you're running all of these ads and sending people into your website, but you don't think your website is quite ready yet to convert and does a good job of converting customers into sales or into leads, then I do recommend you visit Unbounce to have a look at some of the options there and some of the features that this platform has. And then finally, Google Analytics. Google Analytics is the final tool that allows you to track everything. So ultimately, if you're running social media ads, you're running Google PPC, you're sending them into your website, sending them to your landing pages, the only way that you will continually increase your return on investment is if you understand what works and what doesn't work. So if you haven't heard of it before, I'm sure most of you have, but Google Analytics is a free tool. If you just search for it in Google, you can sign up to it. You put a bit of code on your website and it gives you all of the information you need to understand what's working and what isn't working. What you can then do, if you haven't heard of it, is use a UTM tag. So this is the final kind of technical piece of advice that I'll give you in this section, is that if you are running Facebook ads and you are running LinkedIn ads or you're running Google PPC ads, whenever you're sending them to your website, you really do need to put a UTM tag on that link. And what that does is it tells Google exactly where that traffic has come from. And there's a link at the bottom here which allows you to kind of build a UTM tag quickly and easily. And what you can then do is say that this tag is related to this offer, or related to this image, or related to this message. And then in Google Analytics, it will show you exactly what has driven the success of your customer acquisition strategy. So here's just a screenshot of Google Analytics account that we're working on, and you'll see on the left hand side, because we've tagged everything, it's splitting out all of the different channels that's driving traffic and ultimately converting on this client's website. When we clicked into social media, because we've tagged all the different platforms, you'll see here all of the different social media channels that we're using and we're advertising on to drive traffic. And what it tells us is that Facebook is the highest converting platform across the board. So we know actually now we should potentially be prioritizing Facebook. However, what it's telling us on the right-hand side is the conversion rates. And what you'll see is actually Facebook is converting at 0.7%, but YouTube as a social media channel is actually converting at 2%. So depending on how much money we're putting into those platforms, if we're putting the exact amount of advertising spend into those platforms, even though Facebook is converting, generating more revenue at this stage, we know that from the Google Analytics data that YouTube is converting at a higher rate. So we can actually start to make decisions on what's working best. So ultimately, all of those decisions can then start to drive and inform your business moving forward. So this whole kind of testing methodology is something that really you should ingrain into all of your activity. You should always be running a minimum of 2 tests. And what that means is if you're exploring Facebook advertising, you're running a Facebook ad, run 2 ads. One maybe testing to a specific demographic, one to another demographic, or maybe the same demographic and 2 different messages. So one you can use to sell a very particular kind of sales message. One you might use a different sales message with a different USP to understand, okay, is one driving more clicks than the other? All of that insight, even on a small scale, even if you're just spending £10 in Facebook to reach 2,000 people and you test 2 different messages and realize that actually one USP works better than the other USP, you can then use that to inform your entire strategy, your website content, your email content, what content you put on social media moving forward. And all of these incremental insights and incremental gains will help you leverage digital much better to drive sales and acquisition. And all of this insight you build over time will make yourself much more defensible against competitors. And if I go back to the quote right at the start that said 1 in 4 businesses will lose position due to digital incompetence, that report shows that businesses that are exceeding are doing this better, are using social media ads, are using Google PPC, and using testing kind of frameworks to understand what is working and what isn't working. And ultimately, there are I've obviously mentioned there's 2 different, or there's a number of tools that I mentioned throughout this webinar. On the left-hand side, from an acquisition perspective, LinkedIn advertising, Facebook advertising, and Google advertising. When I talk about Facebook advertising, that actually also includes Instagram, Facebook Messenger, and WhatsApp, which are all in the same platform. So if you visit business.facebook.com, there's lots of info there around how you can run ads across all of those. From an analytics platform, Google Analytics, and then the UTM Builder, everything in those first 2 boxes is free, so you don't need to invest anything to kind of start setting up those platforms. And on the right-hand side, I mentioned Unbounce as a tool for landing pages, which I do recommend you visit if you are exploring using advertising and you don't feel your website is ready yet to convert traffic. And then finally, I had a couple of messages prior to the call around email marketing, and email marketing wasn't included in kind of this customer acquisition session, but MailChimp is a good email marketing tool, very low cost if you already have started to acquire customers and you have an email database. It's a great tool for very easily sending messages out through email to your customers and then driving them back into your website. So ultimately, to round off this webinar, if you're going to focus on anything and think about the next steps, it's to really understand kind of your funnel. So you should know pretty well your target audience and who you're looking to speak to, and you should know the different types of questions and queries they ask as they go through the research stage. What are the pain points that really trigger them needing your product or service? Why would they need your product and service, and what are the type of searches they're doing online, or what type of activity are they doing online to find your products and services? You can then start to make decisions on which channels you're going to prioritize. And if you're going to prioritize any, I do recommend that these 3 are the core platforms that you look at: social advertising, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, depending on whether you're B2C or B2B. Google PPC, paid search, relatively cost effective. There's a little bit of a learning curve, of course, but you can either learn that yourself, or you can employ marketing agencies to run those campaigns for you, who will be able to give you the best kind of advice and strategy on who to target within those. But Google AdWords and PPC is core from an acquisition perspective. And then remarketing. Never forget about remarketing. If you are driving traffic into your website, then you should be remarketing to all of those individuals, and using fairly cost-effective remarketing to support that. So thank you for this session. We had a bit of a late start, so we've run out. We've only got 5 minutes of time yet. I have just opened up the Q&A section, and it looks like there's only one question within there. So actually we're pretty good for time. And the quick question was just around kind of sources for all the statistics. We'll certainly do that. So when you receive the follow-up slides by email afterwards, a number of the slides have the source of the stats. We'll also ensure that the source of the statistics are are tagged in those slides when you receive them after the call. So thanks for your time. Within that, I'll just go back to this slide. As I mentioned, if anyone, obviously there's quite a few areas that we tried to cover in this kind of short 45-minute webinar. And we tried to kind of give you a high-level overview of the different channels that can help drive customer acquisition and just some of the things you should be thinking about. We are offering kind of one-to-one 20-minute sessions, which allow us to have a bit of a deeper conversation, and allow myself to have a bit of a deeper conversation around your business model. And we can have a one-to-one conversation on maybe some of the kind of specific tactics that we think you should be considering and prioritizing. If you do want to explore any of those sessions, there's an email address on the slide right here, which you can email, and the team will then be back in contact with you to follow up and book that in. We do have a couple of slots directly after this call, I believe. So if you do email now or shortly after the call, we may be able to get you booked in. If not, we'll find a suitable time and date, and we can have a follow-up conversation with you. Otherwise, ultimately, thanks for your time today. Hopefully you found that beneficial. We'll send the slides over to you afterwards. I also hope, obviously, everything is well for you in your business and from a personal perspective, given, obviously, the current world that we're living in. And I hope you all stay well and healthy. Thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend as much as you can in isolation.